Welcome, listeners, to Briefcase Crimes.
I'm Hannah, and I'm full of facts about horrific events.
And I'm Liz, and I am full of morbid curiosity.
Elizabeth,
Yes, Hannah.
it has been some time since we have been able to sit down and record.
That would be an understatement.
It has been a full year,
Yep.
and now things have changed.
Just a little.
I moved.
I didn't.
I lost my job.
I also didn't. I'm so sorry.
But the world is on fire for both of us.
Yeah.
So at least we have that going for us.
Mm-hmm.
I have a mullet.
Unintentional mullet.
Unintentional mullet. Unironic mullet. So we thought it would just be best to sit down and try to record again now that I'm set up in the new studio, the new house,
Mm-hmm.
and I have no job to take away all my time.
Which I cannot wait to visit your new place, by the way, after this is all over.
Yes, please. Let's wait. Hopefully we can get back to some precedented times.
Yeah.
And we can get you over here as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Are you ready for this story?
I think so.
I'm going to preface this by saying this is our first lady.
Ooh, exciting.
Not meaning that this is not Melania Trump.
Oh,
This is
that would have been...
our This is the first woman criminal on our podcast program. It is not the first lady.
That would be something else.
I mean, I'm staying out of it. I'm not saying anything.
That's fine. Fair enough.
I will also say we tend to stick to sort of like vintage crimes, older crimes, I try to stick like pre 1980. I think we just both like those crimes a little bit more. There's a step removed kind of.
And I feel like it's a little bit of respect too. I feel somewhat weird about talking about very recent events where things are fresh, family is hurt, and I don't know, it rubs me the wrong way a little bit to act like it's some kind of spectator sport. So
Oh no, completely.
it's a little comfortable with that distance.
It's also funny that you mention it being a spectator sport.
Oh no.
Because this case does have a lot of the media attention that you would expect to find in sort of a modern day crime.
Right.
So like I'd say it was kind of on the lines of like, I don't want to say like OJ, Menendez brothers, Casey Anthony, like it wasn't national media attention.
Sure.
But it got quite a lot of attention in the media, and I'll discuss that later, but we're going to go back to the Victorian times.
Ooh, fancy.
We're going to be around turn of the century. So we're in the 1890s.
Okay.
To set the stage, you've got the Wounded Knee Massacre happens right before this. You've got Grover Cleveland coming into his second term. The Spanish-American War, like we're in that time period. So we're getting ready to enter a new century, but we are still Victorian values.
Got it.
Important. So our story begins in February of 1891 with John P. Dunning. And if you look at your slides that I've provided for you, because I am your virtual teacher now.
Ooh.
Those photos. There's a photo of Dunning and there's a drawing of Dunning.
Yeah, they look completely different.
They absolutely do. So as always, photos will be in the brief. Link is in the description and on all social media. So if you want to follow along with these photos, you can do that on the brief, which will be, again, in our description. So one of the things with this is you're going to see a lot of these drawings because this case was heavily covered by William Randolph Hearst's The Examiner.
Ah, classic.
So because it's 1890, people were being photographed, but for for newspapers, they would hire these artists
Right.
who would do a lot of the drawings. So a lot of what you'll see are these drawings that are reproductions of not only people, but also pieces of evidence and stuff like that.
Okay.
So John Presley Dunning, he was a journalist. He had been a war correspondent pre-1891.
Mm-hmm.
So he had been stationed in American Samoa in 1889. And so what was going on was there was this big confrontation between the United States, Great Britain, and Imperial Germany. Mm-hmm. That is how long ago, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Germany still has the Kaiser.
Wow.
There's still a monarchy in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
We are pre-World War I. So basically these three countries they bring all these ships in, and they're going to battle it out to see who reigns over Samoa. And the different local chiefs all sided with different countries. Mm-hmm. So this was like fixing to be a war. So John Dunning is there in Samoa covering this, and in the middle of that, a typhoon hits the island.
Of course.
So by war, what happens is most of the German and American ships sink.
Okay.
So you can't have a war if you don't have any ships.
Well, I mean, you can, but it's
you
going to be a
can't have
really fast one.
You can't have a naval war without any ships.
True.
So the only British ship, the HMS Calliope, managed to get to sea and ride it out. Mm-hmm. And Dunning wrote an account of this whole goings on, like the leading up to and the sinking and the Calliope. He wrote all of that, and everybody claimed it was, quote, first-rate reporting, and it was frequently reprinted. Mm-hmm. So he becomes like this. He is Hazel. Stop. He is this like hotshot war correspondent. Mm-hmm. People know who he is in the journalistic world. In 1891, he marries Mary Elizabeth Pennington in Dover, Delaware.
Okay.
And Mary Elizabeth, the other thing with this case is because it was the 1890s and because there were so many different places covering it, dates and names are all over the place.
Oh, I'm sure.
Some things call her Elizabeth. Some things call her Mary Elizabeth. Some things call her Elizabeth Mary. It's like a mess. Mm-hmm. Most of what I've found has called her Mary Elizabeth. So that is what I am calling her.
Okay.
So Mary Elizabeth Pennington was the daughter of a Delaware congressman. I believe at this point he did not win his re-election, and so he went back to practicing law.
Okay.
By the time they got married, but he had been a senator. They were pretty well off, these Penningtons. Mm-hmm. So her name was well known, his name was well known, and they get married. After they got married, Dunning became the bureau chief of like the Western Division of the Associated Press.
Okay.
So are you familiar with the Associated Press? Do you know what it does, what it is?
Yeah. I'm no expert, but I get it.
So for those who don't know, the Associated Press here in the U.S. is basically a bunch of reporters who get paid by the Associated Press to submit their stories to this sort of almost like just national news network.
Like in a journalistic kind of way. I mean, obviously it's journalism, but more like a journal is what I mean.
Yes, it's not like a CNN. It's like a...
Right.
Like, I liked the article that you wrote in the Salt Lake City Herald or whatever.
Right.
You've submitted this to the AP. We're going to pay you to print your story that you wrote here. So a lot of times when you're looking up news articles online, you'll see that it'll be cited at the top that it's Associated Press. So a bunch of different places can take from the AP. So this was a big deal. He becomes the bureau chief of an entire division of the Associated Press. So they move the whole way across the country to San Francisco. And remember, this was the 1890s, so it was not the San Francisco of today.
Yeah.
This was still, a lot of accounts I've read said that people in the East still saw places like San Francisco as like the Wild West. We, people here, I mean, we're both East Coasters. That's why I said we, but we didn't see it as this like glamorous city by the bay at this point. It was just another Wild West town.
Right.
Also, if you go to your next slide, you will be able to see Mary Elizabeth Pennington.
Again, not the same person in either photo.
Absolutely not. Two different hairstyles. I think
the same jawline.
I think lady on the right with her hair down is markedly prettier. By all accounts, Mary Elizabeth was a very pretty woman.
Yeah, she's very
as far
pretty.
as far as I can read.
On the right, it reads a little bit more modern. I think that's why.
I very much wonder about the picture on the right because it is my knowledge, and please, somebody who knows better than me, correct me if I'm wrong, but to my knowledge, women in the 1890s, especially married women, didn't wear their hair down like that.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was like a very...
it's like scandalous.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And honestly, this is a very scandalous tale, but it does... She is not the reason it is scandalous.
Sure.
Mary Elizabeth was a very kind, beautiful woman. She was very religious. She was very devoted to her husband. So they moved to San Francisco, and they have a child. And they have a daughter. Again, names are screwy. Her name was either Mary or Elizabeth.
Of course.
The daughter was named after the mother, but her name was either Mary or Elizabeth, one of the two. She is very irrelevant. She is barely mentioned in this story. When you read about this story, there's not a lot of background about things. There's just the crime. So
that makes sense, though, because obviously in the time, they probably didn't really care, quite frankly.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't either. Like, as we've talked about this before, I don't care about the background of killers. I don't care what made you the way you are because you ended up bad. Like, you ended up a rotten egg.
Right.
So I don't care if you were left in the sun or if nobody took you out of the fridge or if you were rotten from the day you were laid.
I mean, I find it interesting, but it's not going to change anything, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I always like to make the distinction between, for example, an excuse and an explanation, you know?
Oh, yes.
So to me, it's the same thing. It's like, I might find it fun to figure out that explanation, but it's certainly not going to excuse the behaviors.
Yeah. I think part of my frustration when I'm researching this is, again, this comes from just doing like vintage crime and also sort of like obscure ones, but with a lot of more recent crimes, they get into all of that.
Yeah.
They get into like, this person went to this school and did this thing.
Right.
And it's just like very little is that I can find. John Dunning doesn't have a Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's the thing, like, the psychology is interesting, but, like, I don't care what their favorite snack as a child was. Like, some of it, the stuff is, like, just excessive. You know, we don't need that much background.
No, we don't. But I would like more background about people like Mary Elizabeth. I'd like to know sort of, like, what was her deal? What did she do before she became Mr. J.P. Dunning? Or Mrs. J.P. Dunning, rather. That's another fun thing is reading these old newspapers. All the women are called Mrs. whatever their husband's name was. Yeah. Which comes into it later. I'll discuss later why that kind of was a bit of an issue for me at times.
Well, I mean, even the one photo on the right here, it says Mrs. J.P. Dunning at the bottom, but of course there's an artist signature on the drawing. It's like everyone but her.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I'll explain later, but I did have to crop something out of that picture that you're referring to.
Oh no. I guess I'll find out.
Yes, I'll tell you when we get there. So, at this point, they're married. They've moved to San Francisco. He's working for the AP. They have a tiny baby. Her name is either Mary or Elizabeth. It is irrelevant. But sometime between 1892 and 1895. So, these dates, again, are all over the place. I could not nail down exactly what was for real. Like some reports say 1892, some say 1895, some are times in between. So I'm just going to say between 92 and 95. John Dunning is taking his bike to work. Very eco-conscious. And from what I can read, he was cycling through Golden Gate Park. So, like, the lovely picturesque area around the Golden Gate Bridge. When his bike, quote, broke down.
Okay.
So, you have cyclists in your family.
I sure do.
Some sources extrapolate this, meaning that, like, his wheel fell off or his tire went flat.
Yeah.
When I read that his bike broke down, I just figured he got tired.
Oh, God. Yeah, no, I immediately was like, okay, flat tire or like a gear fell off or something like that.
No. Broke down. He got tired. He didn't want to go any further.
It happens.
So his bike breaks down, and this one event is going to change his entire life.
Okay. That's a really bad breakdown.
Yeah. Yeah, he's going to wish he had like a better bike.
Yeah, and more energy.
So he just so happens to stop by a bench where a 41-year-old woman is sitting. Now, you can go to your next slide.
Ooh, exciting.
Sitting on this bench is Cordelia Botkin.
Also, look at that corseted waist.
Yeah, she's certainly something, this woman. So, I have read a lot about this meeting. A lot of places say it is very, very strange that the two of them struck up such a conversation in 1892 to 95 because they hadn't been previously introduced.
Yeah.
It would have been strange for them to just, like, start talking. Reminds me a lot of the scene in Kiki's Delivery Service when she yells at Tombo and she's like, it's really rude to talk to a woman without even introducing yourself or knowing your name. Yeah. So it reminded me a lot of that. But he just starts gabbing with this lady, this big-hatted woman.
That is a big hat.
At the time, Dunning was 30 years old. And she was 41. So she is 11 years older than him. She is this random lady. And at first, she tells him that her last name is Curtis.
Okay.
I don't know where she got this name.
I mean,
I think she just was like, oh, don't worry about it. It's my alias.
Maybe. I'm thinking, like, I ain't giving you my real last name. Are you kidding? Maybe.
I guess. Well, maybe I'm tainted by knowing the story, but
perhaps.
It
depends on who engaged the conversation first.
She gives him this last name basically as if to say, I am unmarried. My name is Cordelia Curtis. I'm not Mrs. Anybody. After a little bit of talking, she does admit, actually, my name is Cordelia Brown Botkin.
Okay.
My maiden name is Brown. You may have heard of the town Brownsville in Kansas. Yeah, that's named for my father. That's what she tells him.
Name dropping.
Yes. I have been excited to tell you this all day. She admits, my name is Cordelia Botkin. I am married to a grain broker. I'm not sure what that is.
A grain broker.
Somebody who...
Like a
salesman, middleman for grain? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. But I'm married to a grain broker from Stockton, California. And his last name is Botkin. But his first name is Welcome.
That is quite a name.
There are so many good names in this story. But her husband's name is Welcome A. Botkin. And I love him.
I'm just like looking up what a grain broker is.
I imagine it's... You're right.
It's like money stuff. Very
What?
eloquently stated.
Explain.
Okay. I mean, this is just like skimming the results on Google. But it talks about like cash brokerage services and grain inventory financing.
Oh.
So,
well, then that makes a lot more sense.
like a banker-ish, sort of.
When this goes on, there are going to be people listening that are like, that's not what that is.
Right. I'm still looking.
It makes a lot more sense, though, that he would be someone who's, quote, in the money.
Oh, wait. Nope. I think we were right the first time. When you Google search, what does a grain broker do? A grain broker is somebody who facilitates the purchase and sale of grain. So, who knows?
See, I don't want to talk too long about what a broker is.
Me neither.
But to me, a broker is like a middleman.
Yeah.
Who like a stockbroker is somebody who like buys stocks for you.
Yeah.
So maybe a grain broker is somebody who like supplied grain to like general stores and stuff for sale. I have no idea.
I don't know.
I do know that he made money. Like he made a decent amount of money. Hazel.
You must have to be able to afford such a big hat for your wife.
Well, I don't know that he purchased that hat for her because she tells Dunning, my husband's name is Welcome A. Bodkin, and we are estranged.
Oh.
Which, like, best way to introduce yourself to someone.
Right?
Hello, here's my name, here's my husband, we are estranged.
Man.
So, they're estranged. They have a grown son named Beverly.
I feel like I've heard that for a man, though.
I have too, but I can't not call him Bev in my head.
That's fair.
Like, his name's Beverly.
Mm-hmm.
And they both, being Welcome and Beverly, both live in Stockton.
Mm-hmm.
Cordelia lives in San Francisco. Welcome pays a stipend to her every month. So he's paying for her lifestyle.
Yeah.
Including paying her landlady every month. Her landlady's last name was Arbogast.
I've definitely heard Arbogast.
I have too.
Before.
There's a character in Psycho whose last name is Arbogast.
There you go.
But like just these names, we haven't even hit the best name.
I'm ready for it. Whenever.
Somehow Welcome Bodkin is not the best name. So they're estranged. He's paying a stipend to her. He's paying for her rooms. He's paying her landlady. She lives in this 2-story sweet Victorian house on Geary Street. I will say after all of this, that house changed its number.
Oh, wow.
Out of like embarrassment.
Yikes.
So she, at some point, she lives in this in that 2-story house, but then eventually she does, for whatever reason, move into a hotel. Mm-hmm. But he pays for all of that, including her giant hats, in a roundabout way. Whether he's purchasing it and saying, "Here you are, darling, here's a hat," or if he's giving her a stipend and she's going to the milliner and like commissioning a very large hat for herself. It is unknown. So the first thing John Dunning notices about Cordelia Botkin is that she is sultry. She is sultry, especially for the staunch Victorian standards of the day. She is very, like, openly sensual.
Oh.
Yeah. So, like, part of this is hard because I want to be, like, a lady owning her sexuality, a lady, like, not being afraid to be, you know, sexy, but also, like, no, like, read the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're married, he's married, you need to relax.
Well, she's estranged.
They're estranged. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to introduce yourself and the first thing you say is, we're estranged.
Right.
Yeah, they're very sultry. In contrast to this, Mary Elizabeth, as quoted by John Dunning himself, like this is a thing he said about his wife, she was extremely religious and, quote, could not get accustomed to the conditions in San Francisco.
Interesting.
And what I imagine there is, like, she is from the East Coast. She can't get, like, the bay is cold or, like, it's foggy. But my brain immediately goes to, like, today San Francisco. And it's, like...
Right.
It's, like, a haven for the gays.
Yeah, I don't think that was it.
I mean, I don't know. But she didn't like San Francisco very much.
Yeah.
And she was religious, and she didn't want to party, and she wasn't sultry, and she wasn't estranged from her husband.
That's right.
Like, he meets this woman who is openly down to clown, estranged. Like, she's fine. She's here for it. Also, Cordelia thought really highly of herself. She was very vain. And she bragged that she had been photographed in over 100 poses.
Oh my goodness.
Her favorite, I wrote in my notes, her favorite was a kind of full self Nelson move.
What?
So if you go to your next slide,
Oh boy.
you'll see 3 drawings here that were published by the Examiner.
Oh.
The one on the left is her favorite pose, her hands behind her head with her elbows out to the side.
Uh-huh.
As if she was receiving a full Nelson.
Yeah.
And the thing is, this was really sexy.
Well,
like,
yeah.
For Victorian times, this was sexy.
And they drew, like, the teensiest bit of cleavage on her, too. So, I mean, what does that tell you?
This was a lady who just loved to get her picture taken, loved to give herself a full Nelson, and have it taken by a tintype, daguerreotype.
Yeah.
I don't know what was being done at this time.
Yeah,
Please
don't
at me. Not only was this very sexy for Victorian standards, but also you have to remember during Victorian times with female, hold on, the dog's licking herself. Hazel. Hey.
Someone else needs to read the room.
You nasty. Read the room, Cordelia. So, in Victorian America and England and the Empire, I guess, it was not considered cute to be vain. Not that it is now so much, but like
your wife should be quiet and demure and, you know, absolutely.
Yeah, and you want to look clean. You don't want to wear makeup.
Right.
Everything was about being clean, put together, and knowing your place in society.
Right.
So her being vain was like a whole thing. Like, the people that followed this case were like, well, she was vain.
Right.
And there's a reason why there are 3 drawings of her, and only 2 drawings of Mary Elizabeth. Because she was vain, and they really wanted to push the narrative of, like, she had her picture taken 100 times. I probably have had my picture taken 100 times in like a month.
I literally could not even begin to count.
Times they are changing.
Like, I took 6 pictures of myself today. Like, come on.
Wow. Did you take any where you were receiving a full Nelson?
No.
Oh,
But I did send one to you.
you did, and you looked very cute.
Thanks.
Even though your elbows were not outstretched.
No, they weren't.
So, John Dunning becomes infatuated with Cordelia Botkin. And they begin an affair. An extramarital affair.
Oh, no.
It lasted, again, somewhere between 2 and 6 years.
Who knows?
That's such a huge window. But some things say 2, some say almost 3, some say 6. And it's like, the timeline is squishy. Mm-hmm. It lasted a length of time, at least 2 years.
That's like,
and that's
long enough.
That's a long time to be having extramarital affairs.
I agree.
You know how I feel about adultery. Mm-hmm. I do not enjoy.
No.
So this was quite a difficult read for me.
Yeah.
I can read the worst murder stories ever, but give me a story about cheating on someone and I feel ucky.
Yeah.
So they have this affair. It lasts between 2 and 6 years. And in fact, he may have been having as many as 3 extramarital affairs.
Holy crap. Like at the same time.
Who has the time?
I literally, seriously though, because I literally could not. Like, at what time do I have to be like, oh, honey, I'm going out, not suspicious at all, totally gonna be by myself. Like,
plus, you're running a branch of the Associated Press.
yeah.
How do you have time for one marriage, let alone many affairs?
Plus a child. But I'm sure at the time he wasn't doing a ton with the kid. Let's be real.
It is funny, though, that you sort of hinted that he was going to be clandestine about it, because he kind of wasn't.
No.
He was kind of brazen about this. So
yeah.
Mary Elizabeth knew that this was going on. Mary Elizabeth was aware.
But, like, how could you not be, though, is the point. Like, with 3 other women, how could you not?
Yeah, and that's the thing, too, is, like, not only is he cheating on Mary Elizabeth, but he's cheating on Cordelia. Like, you're cheating on these women with each other. Like,
right.
So, Dunning either was already an alcoholic and a gambler, or became an alcoholic and a gambler after making contact with Cordelia. Mm-hmm. I have a feeling that he already had those vices.
Yeah.
Even if they were just like simmering under the surface, but he goes like full blown drinking all the time, going to horse races, and he was even, quote, often seen with Cordelia at races and cafes. Ooh. So he's taking her to the racetrack, which I think a lot of the press was, again, trying to blame her for his, like, downfall. Like, he became untrue to his wife and became a drunk and a gambler.
And it was all because of her.
And it was all Cordelia's fault. The dog wants to go in with her father. Give me 1 minute. Mm-hmm. Because he did not leave the door open. Can you go in with him? So, like I said, I feel like they were trying to blame this on her. But I'm sure, like, you don't just all of a sudden take a mistress and then be like, I want to start day drinking.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't happen. So what happens here is he's gambling, he's drinking, and then he gets accused of embezzlement.
Wow.
So the AP accused him of embezzling $4,000, presumably to pay for his gambling debts. Now, I cannot go back to 1890s to do the inflation calculation. The farthest back I can go is 1913.
Oof.
I don't know why. I'm sure an economist somewhere can tell me, but I don't care. But in 1913, at least, $4,000 was like $100,000.
Wow.
So yeah, he allegedly, he wasn't like brought up on charges or anything for this. They were just like, you stole $100,000. You're going to lose your job now, instead of like, here come the police.
Right. I feel like if I did the same thing and all I did was lost my job, I'd be like, okay,
I would be like,
darn.
thank you. Thank you. I will never do anything like this again. I am so lucky to have gotten away with it this time.
Right?
And all that happened was I lost my job as the bureau chief of the Western Division of the AP.
Mm-hmm.
So his being fired is the final straw for Mary Elizabeth.
Of course.
She is like, you cheating? Now you can't even pay my bills? I'm going back to Dover, and I'm taking my baby, Mary or Elizabeth, along with me. And honestly, good for her.
Yeah, really.
Like, we keep talking about women's roles in the 1890s, but can you imagine? Can you imagine being like, not only am I leaving you, but I'm taking our kid. I'm going back home to my dad.
I'm sure he was happy to take her.
Yeah.
Like, your husband did what? Come home this instant.
This was humiliating.
Well, yeah.
This was publicly humiliating for her, especially because she was very religious, if you recall.
Oh, yes.
So, off to Delaware she goes. Absolutely seemingly unfazed, Dunning moves in, not to Bodkin's, like, her house.
Mm-hmm.
He moves into the Geary Street, like, 2-story Victorian, I assume it was like a boarding house.
Mm-hmm.
He takes rooms there as well, because he doesn't have a job now.
Right.
So his living, his goings on, the things he needs funded are being funded by Welcome Bodkin.
Mm-hmm.
So Welcome Bodkin is basically paying for her to, like, do all this crap with him.
Kind of unbelievable.
Yeah, it's bananas. He moves into the Geary Street house, and then he does also move into the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I'm not sure what happened with the Geary house. I imagine that whoever was running it, that landlady, Arbogast, was like,
Yeah, like, you gotta go.
Goodbye. Yeah. So apparently during this time, he is frequently seen hanging out and drinking whiskey with Cordelia. I took this directly from one of my articles, which you can find the link in the brief. I believe this is the one from, let me check. This is one that is, like, detailing the Examiner coverage of this. It is called A Splendid Little Murder. I got my version of it from Murderpedia, but you can also find it apparently at well.com. It was written by Betsy Culp in 1999, but Betsy says, visitors recalled seeing Jack Dunning sitting casually with a glass of whiskey in his hand as he bantered with a bathrobe-clad Cordelia.
Oh my.
They also noticed, with raised eyebrows, the frequent presence of a 31-year-old widow, Louise Seeley, a close friend of son Beverly, unquote. So I'm not sure if that last line is trying to say, like, he was also having an affair with this Louise Seeley, or what the accusation is there.
Yeah.
But
Because if not, that would be crummy to drag that guy's name into it.
Right? What if all she was doing was being friends with Bev?
Right?
But like I said, it's not said
Yeah.
what the accusation is. But
I can tell you one thing. I would not want him at that point.
I wouldn't either. I've never understood that. People who have married a man that cheated on their wife, let me know. If you were a mistress and then became the next wife, what are your motivations? I genuinely want to know. Because
I can't imagine it.
I can't imagine being like, I want to be with this person who has cheated on one one person he made vows to. Again, I've got serious opinions about, adultery. Yeah. So maybe I'm not the best one to be judging anybody here because I can't handle it. It's not known what they were bantering about, but apparently Mary Elizabeth was frequently a topic of discussion. At some point, he tells her a ton of stuff about her. Mm-hmm. Like, they talk about her a lot. And he tells her things like she has a sweet tooth. She loves sweets. She has a friend in San Francisco. Her name's Mrs. Corbailey. Like, I don't know why you would tell anyone this. Yeah. It's boring.
It's like, but my wife who left me, here's some
who left me because I'm unemployed and day drinking with you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, here's details about my wife who's so much better than you, apparently.
Yikes.
He, tells her all this stuff. So this goes on for some time. They're just, having fun, having some debauchery. And in 1898, the USS Maine exploded off the coast of Cuba, mm-hmm. which launches the country into the Spanish-American War. Mm-hmm. Now, the AP apparently just decided to forget about the embezzlement.
Oh my God.
So they were like, hey, buddy, you're a great war correspondent. Can you go to Cuba? Some other sources say Puerto Rico, but I'm almost certain he went to Cuba.
Maybe they just saw him as expendable at that point.
It's true. They were like, hey, you're not doing anything.
Right? It's like, hey, you're no great loss.
You can't steal money from us if you're in Cuba.
Right.
So they tell him, you're getting hired, you're going to Cuba. So Cordelia goes with him to the ferry to see him off. And by all accounts, this was a tearful goodbye. Mm-hmm. She begged him not to go. She told him, stay here with me. You don't need to get this job. You don't need to go out there. Because I think part of it was that she was probably thinking this is the end of whatever we have mm-hmm. as it is, but also you're going into this dangerous situation.
Yeah.
She was begging him to stay. He is a piece of trash and has no chill mm-hmm. and tells her, not only am I taking this job and going to Cuba to do this thing, but I have no intentions on returning to San Francisco.
Ouch.
And taking up with you again. I am going to go back to Delaware when I'm done with my war correspondence. I'm going to rejoin Mary Elizabeth and my child, who has a similar issue with her name. I'm going to go back to Delaware and mm-hmm. have my wife take me back, basically. Mm-hmm. I have written in my notes, a stand-up guy.
Oh, right.
Just a great guy. So at this point, Cordelia's friends all talk about her being very depressed, mm-hmm. being very melancholy, and acting very erratic and weird. Mm-hmm. Her life was thrown for a loop with this. So during this period, Mary Elizabeth, all the way across the country, just living with her parents, having a good time, doing whatever you do in Delaware, mm-hmm. She starts getting anonymous letters. And they are signed from a friend. Uh-huh. Just a friend. Somebody looking out for your best interests. Uh-huh. These letters are telling her about the hot babe her husband is constantly seen with. Mm. The woman is referred to as interesting and pretty. And the letters warn her, when he comes back from Cuba, do not reconcile with him. Uh-huh. Hang him out to dry. He is with this super foxy, hot babe who is incredibly well-read and interesting.
Can you just imagine getting these letters?
No. I can't imagine any part of this happening to me.
It's None a little insane. Because, obviously, it's the mistress. Duh.
Oh. It's an anonymous friend, Elizabeth.
I'm sorry.
It's not. How do you know it's Cordelia? That's basically the motto of this this woman is how do you know it's me?
Right.
Okay. She writes these letters. Mary Elizabeth is like, these are weird. I'm going to give them to my dad for safekeeping. Mm-hmm. So, Mr. Pennington, I believe his name is John, but it's really irrelevant. Mm-hmm. He puts them away somewhere and forgets about them, basically. Mm-hmm. Like, whatever. Those are weird. We're not dealing with it. Then, on August 9th, 1898, the Pennington family sits down to a meal of trout and corn fritters. Ooh. I wondered when I read this why that was relevant.
I don't know.
But
again, I don't need to know what the snack is. Like,
it kind of comes back. But honestly, I've read so many old newspapers that it's a wonder it wasn't like, and here is the recipe for Mrs. Pennington's corn fritters.
Right.
Like, I guess we're just glad that it says that. So they eat their trout and their corn fritters, and then they go to the veranda to escape the summer heat because it's August in the East Coast. We're no longer in cool San Francisco. We are in Delaware. So they're hanging out after dinner outside on the porch, and Mary Elizabeth finds this is just the perfect time to share the box of chocolates she received in the mail from her friend, Mrs. Corbaley. Mm-hmm. Or Corbailey. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. But she says, I got this box of chocolates. It's a nondescript box. It's got chocolate bonbons, and they're resting on a cambric handkerchief with the price tag still on it.
Of course.
Tacky.
Very.
That was my first thought, was like, you don't send someone a gift and leave the tag on it. Like, I love you this many dollars worth. Like, no. So it also, the handkerchief also has embroidered on it the city of Paris, which is a novelty shop. So that's likely where it was purchased. Mm-hmm. And it's postmarked in San Francisco, where Mrs. Corbaley lives, or Corbailey lives. And there is a handwritten note that says, with love to yourself and baby, Mrs. C. So she has no reason not to assume these are from her friend in San Francisco.
Right.
And she's got a sweet tooth. She loves chocolate. So she opens it. She offers it to her family and friends that are there. Her parents decline. Gonna assume they had the sugars. Mm-hmm. I don't know why you would decline chocolate, but it's kind of good that they did. They declined, but her sister, Ida Dean, and again, this is where I bring up why it was very inconvenient for me that it called her by her husband's name, because her name was either Mr. or Mrs. Joshua Dean in everything. She was either Mrs. J. Dean, Mrs. Joshua Dean, Ida Harriet, or Lila.
Oh my.
So there's like, what is her name? Can we just call her by her actual name?
Right.
So yeah, I have Ida Dean, or possibly Lila, but probably not. The most things I have seen say Ida, so that's what I'm going to go with. Mm-hmm. So her parents say no, but Ida has it. Ida has some chocolate. Ida's two small children also have some chocolate, and two neighbor kids that were there also have chocolate. Though it is said that Mary and Ida ate the majority of it, which
same.
Like, if it were me and my sister, yes.
Yeah, it would be gone.
First of all, this was mine. This is my friend. Mrs. Corbailey sent me this. Mm-hmm. I will be eating all of it.
Right.
I also like that the note with love to yourself and baby. I mean, the love is for yourself and baby. Is she assuming the baby is also going to eat this chocolate?
Yeah.
I think at this point the baby would have been at least 2.
Probably could have had a little bit.
Could have been 2 or 6.
You know.
So it's, again, Mary Elizabeth, 44-year-old Ida, Ida's 2 unnamed children, and 2 unnamed neighbor kids are the ones that eat the chocolate. almost immediately, they become violently ill.
Jeez.
They get stomach cramps and vomiting, which is not a good time.
No.
So, Mr. Senator Pennington calls for a doctor. Mm-hmm. The doctor comes over, and he diagnoses them with cholera morbus, which I believe now is called gastroenteritis.
Oh, okay.
And this was like a really common ailment then because there weren't refrigerators. Mm-hmm. So people would get this sort of just like inflammation of the gastroenterological. Wait, help.
The gastro tract. Just say gastro tract.
Yeah, your GI. Your GI tract would get inflamed.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm not a medical doctor. And this would happen because your food wasn't safe.
Right.
Because it wasn't cold. So your bacteria was growing on it. So the doctor said, they have this cholera morbus. It's probably from the corn fritters. So that's why all the articles felt the need to tell me about the corn fritters.
No, not my corn
Not
fritters.
my fritters. Exactly. Mrs. P is incensed.
Yeah.
Never my fritters. So, the thing is, Mr. Pennington does call BS on this.
Oh, for sure, because they're not sick.
Exactly. They're not sick.
And did the neighbor kids eat the corn fritters?
Exactly.
This isn't my first rodeo.
You are Detective Liz.
Thank you.
On the case. So, exactly. He and his wife were fine, but had eaten the corn fritters. The neighbor children had not eaten dinner with them. Mm-hmm. They were incredibly sick. So either this was incredibly coincidental or the doctor was wrong.
Right.
So, Mr. Pennington calls a specialist. Which, like, can you imagine just being like, I'll just call a specialist? And not like...
Let me get a referral.
Yeah, I don't know if you'd need a referral in this case.
I would just go to the ER, but like...
I don't think the ER existed.
Right, that's what I mean. Like now.
Exactly. The fact that the doctors are coming to their homes leads me to believe the ER did not exist.
Right.
He calls a specialist. I have in parentheses, trust your gut. If you feel like you don't have gastroenteritis from your corn fritters, call a specialist. Yeah. This has been a PSA. Bet. The specialist comes and determines it is most definitely poisoning.
Well, yeah.
But at this point, it's too late to do anything.
No. So
the children recovered. Ida's children and the neighbor children did recover. They made it through this. But after 2 days of agony,
oh my God,
Ida and Mary Elizabeth died.
Jeez.
So, Mr. Pennington remembered that there was a note written with this chocolate. Mm-hmm. And he remembered that his daughter had been receiving these anonymous taunting notes. Mm-hmm. So, he compared them. Mm-hmm. And he thought they looked mighty similar.
He is a smart dude.
He is. He should have been a detective.
Yeah, honestly.
Instead of a senator or a lawyer.
Right.
Senator, lawyer, detective.
Then again, was
John
he a
Pennington.
criminal defense lawyer? Because if he was a criminal defense lawyer, then that would make a lot of sense.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what kind of lawyer he was. I just always assume they're just like, when it just says a lawyer, I imagine it's just like a tax lawyer or something.
Yeah, I mean, who knows?
Something wrongful death or like mesothelioma. Something.
Talc powder.
Yeah. Vaginal mesh.
You know.
Something not a criminal lawyer.
Right.
A prosecutor of some kind.
Yeah.
But yeah, he should have been a detective. He could have been in like the Pinkertons. Mm-hmm. He also sends a telegram to John Dunning, and John Dunning comes back right away. Mm-hmm. Although I don't know how long it would take to get from Cuba to Dover, Delaware in 1890.
Yeah.
But he does. He gets back as quickly as possible. He sends him a telegraph basically to say, the one thing I saw said, your beloved wife, to tell him his beloved wife had died. And I was like, wasn't too beloved if he was having 3 extramarital affairs.
Yeah.
But he comes right back. He sees the note. And he immediately says, Cordelia.
Ooh.
But how do you know it is? So, if you go to the next page, your next slide, you'll see on the left is a drawing of a letter sent by Mrs. Botkin, known to have been sent by Cordelia, known handwriting sample. And on the right, you'll see that it says trip to Los Angeles. He was constantly with this interesting and pretty woman, underline.
Yeah.
This is one of the taunting anonymous letters. And can I say her handwriting is abysmal?
It is. Dear goodness.
It's so bad. It looks like she was on a bus. So left side is hers, right side is the note. Pennington and Dunning both say this looks like Cordelia's handwriting. And also the next slide is the with love to you and baby, to yourself and baby, Mrs. C. And the handkerchief underneath. Again, this is just a drawing reproduction of it, but it's what appeared in the Examiner itself.
Goodness, it's a miracle they could even read those.
I know. I would have been like, with trove to queen and beef and babu? Mew E.
I mean, but like the anonymous letter definitely looks like somebody trying to have bad handwriting.
Yes, it looks like somebody trying to not have their own handwriting.
Yeah.
I will say, I believe, I'm like 99% sure that nowadays forensic graphology, like handwriting analysis and stuff, is no longer like able to be used in court.
Interesting.
Because I believe they have found that it's not an exact science.
Yeah.
I know that has been the case with like hair analysis and also like forensic odontology. So, I mean, we can sit here and say it looks like somebody who is trying to not have the handwriting, but like, I think it does. I think it looks like the person on the left is writing and trying to not look like it's their own writing.
Right.
Like when you write with your left hand or your toes.
Yeah. As you often write with your toes.
I take all my notes with my toes. That's why I can't read any of them. So he says, okay, this handwriting matches. And then Mr. Pennington even wraps up the remaining chocolates and the handkerchief. He takes everything, wraps it up. He gives it to the Dover police. And the Dover police say, okay, we need to track this down and figure this out. Is this going to be a Delaware case? Is this going to be a San Francisco case? The chocolates are postmarked in San Francisco. They were purchased in San Francisco. The handkerchief is purchased in San Francisco, but the murders are committed in Dover.
Right.
So what do we do? So what they end up doing is they have everything sent to the San Francisco police, sort of like as the property of, or under the custody of the Delaware police. So that way, I guess they're sort of both in cooperation.
Yeah.
So they send the chocolates away to a chemist at John Pennington's request.
Okay.
To be tested. And the chemist finds crystalline arsenic.
Classic.
So they died of arsenic poisoning. Now, remember, up until like a certain point in time, it was very easy to get arsenic.
Yeah.
Like now I don't know where you would find arsenic other than like, I guess apple seeds have them.
Yeah, but like how many apple seeds would you even need?
I don't know, but that then in the way back then times, they used it as rat poison. Like, it wasn't uncommon to go to a druggist and get arsenic. But Cordelia didn't cover her tracks very well. Spoilers. Well. It's Cordelia. But how do you know it's Cordelia? In the days that followed, they talked to the clerks from the candy store. They talked to a man from the Owl drug store. They talked to the lady at the City of Paris novelty shop. And all of them were like, yeah, it was this big woman with a big hat. Like, it was this woman who's been photographed 100 times. Right. Like, they had photos of her. It was very easy to say, was this the woman who bought this handkerchief? Was this the woman who bought these chocolates? I will say that the man at the Owl drugstore did say that she bought arsenic in June. The murders were committed in August. And that she bought powdered arsenic. Now, I don't know if you put powdered arsenic into chocolate, if it will become crystalline. I am not sure.
Yeah.
I am not a chemist, but that is what happened. Also, it says Miss Henley from the market shop further swore the box sent to Dover was identical in every way to the one she sold Cordelia. And my favorite part of this is John Dunnigan, was a postal clerk, and he helped Cordelia, like, mail the package. And he remembered that the box was addressed to Mrs. John Dunning because it was very similar to his name.
Yeah.
So he was like, oh, yeah. So you've got all these people who helped her, who sold her things, and who remember seeing her. However, Cordelia claimed that during this time she was in Stockton with her estranged husband Welcome and her son Bev. And she said also the arsenic that I bought in June was powdered and not crystalline. So she tries to poke a bunch of holes. I believe she also even, like, brings up other alibis. Like, I've never even been to the post office. I don't know what she said.
Right.
I will say this is, by all accounts, the first murder that we know of that was committed via the USPS.
Interesting.
Which brings me to my next segment. Let's save the USPS.
Yeah. They have a merch store, just saying.
I will now get off my soapbox. But if you want to murder someone, the USPS is the best. Just kidding. Stop. Don't do that. Please don't murder people.
Oh, goodness.
So even though she gives all of these alibis, she gives all of this, like, trying to poke all these holes in the case, it goes to trial. And this is where I said it was covered so heavily at this point by the examiner that it's almost like, was it being investigated by the police or the examiner or both? Like, the examiner was borderline doing an investigation. William Randolph Hearst sent a woman reporter to befriend Cordelia and try to get, like, the details out of her. And she published whatever Cordelia told her.
Interesting.
Even though Cordelia never Cordelia never confessed to the crime. That reporter's name was Lizzie Livernash.
Oh, God. That poor woman.
The best names. These names are great. So she tells her a bunch of stuff, but she doesn't confess to the crime. So the trial was fairly cut and dry, though. I will say it was, like I said, a very highly publicized trial. It's kind of a big deal because it was across, like, the entire country.
Yeah.
This crime was committed. And it was being so heavily covered by the examiner that, like, people were packed into the courtroom. One of the accounts that I read said that one day it rained, which was strange for California. It was very dry that year.
Yeah.
One day it rained, and the amount of people in the room was creating such body heat that the clothes that were wet from being outside started to steam.
Oh, God.
Yeah, like it was so hot from all the people that the wet clothes started to evaporate.
That sounds awful.
Or the wetness from the clothes, rather,
Right.
not the clothes themselves.
That would
Everyone
be
was
something
naked.
else.
So there were people everywhere. And outside of the courtroom, outside of the courthouse, I guess even, the examiner set up a bulletin board where they would put up like what was going on hour by hour or whatever. They would update it as things changed so that people who couldn't get in could still follow the crime. So it was, again, like I said, this wasn't necessarily as big as OJ, Menendez brothers, all of that, but it has the similar smell of publicized trial,
Yeah.
publicized crime, all of that. You have people from the public who know what to expect. They know what they're going to hear at this trial. Dunning testified, and he said he did have an affair with multiple women, but he wouldn't reveal their names other than Cordelia Botkin. So this really upset the defense attorney because he was trying to establish, okay, but you had other mistresses. Couldn't it have been one of them,
Right.
basically?
Establish a reasonable doubt.
Exactly. And because he wasn't answering, he spent a few nights in the county jail, which I assume that's being held in contempt of court.
Yeah, probably.
I assume that was what the charge was. But he was so resolute to not say these other women's names that the defense just withdrew its question. So after not answering, they were just like, fine, we'll just take it back.
Right.
And normally here I would say good, because at least the jury heard that, but it didn't really seem to matter. So it's getting dark. I need light. Wonderful. So Botkin also testified in her own defense.
Well, sure.
I mean, you say, well, sure, but a lot of times they advise that the defendant not testify.
That's true.
Because if you're like Ted Bundy, who tried to defend himself
Yikes.
and testified himself and made a fool of himself, didn't help his case at all, sometimes it doesn't help.
Right.
So she testified, and at first she was described as being spirited, a spirited tone, and it sort of gave the impression that like she had a brain and she was independent, and that was not gonna fly. So later her counsel advised her that she'd like tone it down a little. So she did, and the next time that she was on the stand, she was very soft-spoken and genteel. She sort of like went back into what we were talking about, those Victorian ideals of what a lady should be.
Right.
So she did all that. She offered her alibis. She said her arsenic was bought in June. It was powdered, whatever. However, it only took 4 hours with a break for dinner to find her guilty of first-degree murder. Now, we've talked before about like, I think the Stanley Haas case took like 65 minutes. Like 4 hours is a long time, but not in jury time.
No, not in jury
Not
time.
at all.
Especially not for a murder case.
Yes. And I don't know like how stringent they were then. I know they're very stringent now when they pick juries about like making sure they don't know too much about the case, making sure they're not like following it in the Examiner
Or know
like,
somebody involved or whatever.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if these people came into it with pre-existing bias. I'm sure they were all men.
Positive, yeah.
Very certain they were men. But it took them 4 hours, and they ate dinner in the middle of it. So not that long.
No, not by a long shot.
So they convicted her of first-degree murder, and she was sentenced to life in prison.
That is killings. A lot for a woman at that time.
Yes, absolutely.
And I mean, to be fair, you know, women were not typically given sentences as harsh as men, and that, you know, is a problem in and of itself. But ignoring that fact, that is a really, really harsh sentence for a woman during that time.
To put that into perspective a little bit, I just double checked it to make sure I was correct. The Lizzie Borden case, the murders in that case took place in 1892. So shortly before this, but like in memory. And again, for those who don't know, the Lizzie Borden case is sort of infamous for the fact that there's strong, compelling evidence that Elizabeth Borden committed these murders, but at the time it was thought that a woman wouldn't have been capable of doing something so terrible.
Right.
I'm not sure, however, if part of this was that it was poison, which the Elizabeth Borden case was with an axe, so it was a little bit more physical.
Yeah.
This one was with poison, which is strongly considered like a woman's weapon.
Right.
Not to say that men don't poison people, because they absolutely do.
Right.
But you also have on top of that the fact that she's being covered as by these newspapers as being vain and sexual and a deviant.
Right.
And so it's not hard then to say, well, then she must also be a murderer. Not to say that I don't think that she did it, because I absolutely think that she did it.
I was going to ask, yeah.
No, I absolutely think she did this. There is not a doubt in my brain that she did this. But I'm just saying.
See, for me, I am kind of like, what about the other mistresses? But also all of the shopkeeps and everything. Like, that's very compelling.
But also, what if John Dunning had a type, and that type was big ladies with big hats?
Right, exactly.
We don't know. However...
And are you really going to remember from June, you know, from months ago, that it was definitely powdered or whatever?
If a woman comes in with that strong of sex appeal...
And is flashing her 100 and some photographs.
Yeah, she walks in and she's like, "Hi, I'm Cordelia Botkin, and I'm here to buy some powdered arsenic, please.
Right. Here's
my 100 photos. This is my favorite. I'm doing a Nelson on myself." The slide 8, here is some things that were published during the actual trial. So you have some more drawings and this like weird... almost yearbook collage on the right. It reminds me a lot of like in my high school yearbooks, they would try to make a collage with like candids of everybody.
Yeah.
And they would do this sort of like cut out thing. So you'd have like random pictures of people in like chem class. But yeah, there's like her and there's the prosecutor. There, I will say the right one there is from, she appealed this in 1904 and was reconvicted as well. Yeah. They said a second time, like,
nah, girl, you did it.
It was you. We knew it then, we know it now.
Playing.
When the examiner put the guilty verdict from the first trial up on their bulletin board, the crowd that was packed around it cheered. They went bananas.
Jeez.
They were like hungry for blood here.
Yeah.
And especially, like I said, you have this woman who's got loose morals, and she's married, and she's caused this married man to stray. Right. And then the victim is this daughter of a widower. Senator.
Yeah.
This daughter of a senator, and she's very religious, and she's pretty.
Just like classic.
Yeah, it wasn't hard for William Randolph Hearst to turn the nation against her.
Right.
Again, I think she did it, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think that she was very, as far as her press coverage, I think she's very much a product of her time. So she appealed in 1904. She's reconvicted then as well. And originally, it's like... our murderers can't just go to jail and then be done in these stories.
Yeah.
So she goes to jail. in San Francisco, but then the San Francisco earthquake of 1906 happens.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So the jail becomes really crowded, and she gets rehomed to San Quentin, which is like the California prison. Charles Manson was in San Quentin. Like, it is the prison.
Right.
I guess besides like Alcatraz when it was operational.
Yikes.
But I don't think she was quite bad enough to need to be in Alcatraz.
No.
Especially because I read an article from 1910, and I believe that this article, which was wild to read, but I believe it was written because she died in 1910.
Oh, wow.
And so I think the article was like trying to capitalize on that, like, hey, this person died, remember what they did? So in that article, they claim that she enjoyed extraordinary privileges in exchange for sexual favors with her guards and officers. Now, originally, I didn't know if this was just salacious, like trying to be salacious, or if this was an actual, like, base in fact thing. However, I found a source. This is also going to be in the brief. It'll be linked, but in this source, it says, after her sentencing, Cordelia was remanded to the Branch County Jail rather than San Quentin State Penitentiary. Sadly, Judge Cook, who presided over the first trial, Judge Cook's wife passed away, and he often visited her grave. One such Sunday, the judge was on his way to pay his respects, and to his astonishment, he saw Cordelia riding along in a streetcar. Which, if that's not, like, the most San Francisco sight,
Right.
is, like, them in a streetcar going in front of the Golden Gate Bridge with, like, those beautiful houses from, like, it's basically the Full House opening, but with Cordelia Botkin.
Oh, God.
It says, she was completely unaccompanied by any guards. As it turned out, Cordelia was trading sexual favors for a bit of freedom.
Wow.
So, I don't know how credible, like, that story is. I don't imagine that it's not, but also, like, I just don't know.
But, like, it's also one of those things where, I mean, Cordelia Botkin doesn't really have, like, that many, you know, really super outstanding facial features. Like, how fast was this car moving? Like, how briefly did this guy see it for?
Did she have a big hat on?
Right.
Did she have 100 pictures?
You know, so that's kind of, to me, is sketchy, you know, as to whether or not it would be true.
I mean, they were in the same streetcar, though.
Oh, I thought he was just passing by and saw the streetcar.
No.
I misunderstood.
She was riding along.
Oh.
This was basically like you were in a trolley and there's a person on the trolley with you that is the person you prosecuted.
Saw the car go past him. Okay, well, that's different then. Yeah, I don't know.
I just picture her having like one of those grandma wallets that has the like fold out of all her grandkids, but they're all pictures of her.
Little tintypes or something.
Yeah. As for his part, J.P. Dunning died in 1907 or 1908, presumably from drinking.
Well, probably.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if he was having issues before.
Yeah. And now his wife is dead because of something he did.
Yeah.
His wife and his sister-in-law.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Welcome and Beverly died 1 year apart from the same heart condition in 1904 and 1905, respectively. So, Cordelia is imprisoned.
Yeah.
Couldn't think of the word. Cordelia is imprisoned, and then her husband and her son die, and then the man that she loved enough to murder someone for dies. And I will also say, I don't think that by sending a box of chocolates, you're intending to murder one person.
That's fair. You want to cause havoc.
I think you're trying to murder one specific person, but if other people die too, like, who cares?
Right. Especially
That's what
how many chocolates were in the box.
Yeah, enough for
Six
six people. Six people.
6 people.
2 big ones and 4 little ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, like enough that, yeah. And enough that then after the 6 people ate, there was enough to test.
Right.
So
That's a
I
big
think she
box
didn't
of
care.
chocolates. Or a lot of arsenic.
Well, yeah.
I don't know. The way that it was phrased, though, it made it seem like they really had their fill of it, though.
Yeah, enough that, like, they ate the majority, so they died.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just think that she had she didn't care who ate it.
No
as
regard
long as
whatsoever.
like she got her comeuppance or whatever. Also, if you look at the last slide, these are her mugshots from 1904.
Wow.
I know.
That's like definitely the oldest mugshot I've ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've probably seen older, but I will say it's probably the oldest mugshot of a woman I have seen.
Yeah.
I love her double heart brooch.
Yeah, I was just looking at that.
She is in prison, but she is still gonna be.
She is pissed.
Stylish.
You can tell from her face. She is pissed.
The article that I read from 1910 said Cordelia's least favorite picture.
Oh, well,
her mugshot.
Go figure.
So I wonder if she would have been less pissed if they would have let her do a full Nelson on herself.
Maybe. That was her favorite after all.
Yeah, like, could I just do my favorite pose? Oh, no, I have to do this mugshot pose? Okay.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm just going to be annoyed. She had also just lost an appeal.
True.
So, like, no, lady, you're in here forever.
Yeah.
She died, as you can see on top of the one picture, she died on March 7th, 1910, and her death certificate attributed her cause of death to, quote, softening of the brain due to melancholy.
Ew.
Which, like, if I don't have that, I don't know what.
Right?
I don't know.
That is one heck of a cause of death.
Yeah, but I mean, like, this is the same story where someone tried to be like, oh, you're just violently vomiting because of some bad corn fritters, not because of arsenic. So
I just think that's so funny. And doesn't that just say a ton about, like, how doctors treated women?
Yeah. She died because she was too sad and her brain got soft. Because they did say, like, she was in jail. She had now lost her husband, her son, and her lover. And she lost an appeal. So
right.
She's a sad lady.
Definitely.
And her brain got soft and she died. And that is the story of Cordelia Botkin, our first woman criminal. The first person on record to have killed somebody using the postal service.
Messy killer.
A messy queen.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, for sure. And also, can I just say, I don't know if it's because her hair is, like, disheveled in the last picture, but she reminds me of the Trunchbull.
Oh, my God, she does.
She does. She is very Trunchbullish.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I assume her hair is messy because they took that hat off of her from the first one.
Yeah. She probably had it all pinned up and all that.
But that's Cordelia Botkin.
Wow. And that just goes to show, don't cheat on your wife with 3+ mistresses. Because one of them is going to kill your family.
That is the moral of the story. I almost, but did not. I almost went to the store and got myself a box of chocolates.
Oh, no.
Because this story has made me want candy badly.
Be careful.
Yeah, but if I'm buying them for myself, and nowadays they're sealed.
That's true.
It's a whole thing. And if that's how I go, that's how I go, okay?
At least you don't go from melancholy and softening of the brain.
It's either going to be arsenic and chocolate or my brain's going to get really soft because I'm depressed.
You do have the brain damage to start it off.
That's true. It's already pretty soft.
Oh, yeah.
I do believe that in our last recording, at the very end, we talked about what we're reading.
Oh, no. Don't ask me that. I'm not reading anything right now. Well,
I'm not. Well, I am.
I want to be. I've started something, but I haven't picked it up in a long time.
Well, we could do that, or we did in our first one, we talked about something good we've done for ourselves.
Just pick something. I'll roll with it.
I mean, you start, because I have like a couple things in mind, so whatever you go with.
I'm bad at coming up with things on the spot. That's the problem. Just pick one. Just go with one.
Do you just want to talk about like what you have started reading but haven't picked up in a while?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, so I will restart this. I will also say I'm glad that we're doing 2 separate streams, because where we step on each other's toes,
yeah,
I can fix that now. Also, and it's fantastic.
My chair has been like squeaking as I like readjust myself, and it sounds like little farts. So
Liz has been farting this entire episode.
No.
In our last recording 1 year ago, I believe we discussed what we were reading as a way to sort of palate cleanse the yuckiness from the episode. I can go first if you'd like.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Ryan's mother and I have been trading books like a ton this year, which is great because I just constantly have a new flow of books coming in, and I've been reading a ton this year because I don't have a job. But I will say, even with all of that, I am currently rereading A Song of Ice and Fire.
Oh.
I read, I think, 3/4 of A Game of Thrones. And then because the show did such a good job of like staying close to the books for the first like couple seasons, I kind of bailed on it because I was like, well, if they're just gonna do such a faithful adaptation, why read it?
Right.
And so we were rewatching Game of Thrones, and I was like, I have the books, I have Audible. There's no reason why I can't just re-pick this up.
Yeah.
And so I am almost done with A Game of Thrones, and I will be moving on to the next one here shortly.
Nice.
But that is what I have been enjoying.
That's
what have
fun.
you been reading?
So I have been trying, because I'm a little bit busier, so it's few and far between when I get to actually pick it up. And also because I super love audiobooks, and unfortunately the topic that I want to read right now is just not available in audio, like period. But I've been doing research on old Italian witchcraft. So I had to buy a couple of books, which as a librarian, I don't love to buy books. I prefer to obviously borrow them. But again, like this topic is niche, super, super niche. So I picked up a couple books on Amazon about Italian witchcraft, and I've been reading about that, which is super cool because I have some deep roots in Italy. My mother was born in Italy, and I am first generation on her side of the family. So I told her about it, and I kind of, my parents are fairly religious, so I like didn't know what she was going to think about it. But she's actually really intrigued as well. So I thought that was kind of fun. And they call it the old religion because it's basically what everybody practiced before Christianity and Catholicism took over Italy. So that's what I've been reading on.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Though.
Yeah, it's
different. Nice that you have such roots to it as well.
Yeah, and it's funny because things permeate, right? So there are things that are part of the old religion that are still observed that people probably have no idea that it's even
that's where it
rooted.
comes from.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you've ever seen, there's 2 particular symbols that are like Italian symbols. Like if you know somebody who's very, very Italian, or you've been to like an Italian grocery store, you've probably seen like the little pepper looking thing, which is actually a horn, by the way. Or you've seen a hand, which it's kind of doing like the rock symbol, sort of like the pinky and index finger out thing. And those are rooted in witchcraft. So they're wards, essentially, to ward away curses, the malocchio, or the evil eye.
When you say the pepper.
Yeah.
Do you mean like the pepper that hangs from your grandfather's rearview mirror?
Yes.
Okay. That's immediately what I thought of,
Yeah.
and I thought that's what it was.
Yeah,
Like, I thought that was the
sometimes
point of it.
It's usually red or gold. So that's what you see it as, either like a red, and that's why it looks like a pepper, because it's red, but it's a horn.
Yeah.
So yeah, and a lot of people wear them like on a chain around their necks, you know, or like on charm bracelets or something. They used to hang them above the baby's cribs because
Aw,
you don't want
that's
your
kinda
baby to
cute.
get cursed.
Mm.
Right?
Wow.
So that's what I'm
I
reading.
don't know. That's interesting. I look
Yeah.
forward to hearing more about that, either
Yeah.
on podcast or off.
Yeah, it's
But
very
I'm
cool.
interested. So with that, would you like to sign off?
Yeah. So thanks for tuning in to our third podcast a year later.
Yes. Can you tell the people where they can find us?
Yes, you can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, let me think, we have a coffee account. We are on Spotify, YouTube, pretty much all the big names you can find us.
Yes, and we have the same name everywhere.
Exactly.
Briefcase Crimes. Thank God we didn't have to be like Briefcase Crimes 69 or something.
Right, that'd be awkward.
We could just be our name.
Yeah.
So that was great. So all of the links will be in the description, including the brief. You can find that all underneath
Or above,
this
depending
this
on where you're
audio,
listening.
above this audio, on any of our social media. Links should be posted to be able to find those things. So you can see all the pictures that I showed Elizabeth. You can get all of the sources that I referenced to make my outline. And feel free to send us any messages you have, any questions you have. Let us know how we're doing. And I don't want to be, that guy, but like, if you want to subscribe or like support us in any way, that's definitely helpful.
Yep.
For us, at least.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.